cycles in different species of life and different planets, almost perpetually. This process is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Brahmayan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse 61. Under the spell of Maya, everyone is wandering throughout the universe on the carriage of the body offered by the material energy. Materialistic life offers a series of actions and reactions. It is a long film spool of actions and reactions, and one lifespan is just a flash in such a reactionary show. When a child is born, it is to be understood that particular type of body is the beginning of another set of activities. And when an old man dies, it is to be understood that one set of reactionary activities is finished. We see that because of different reactionary activities, one man is born in a rich family and another is born in a poor family, although both of them are born in the same place, at the same moment and in the same atmosphere. One who is carrying pious activity with him is given a chance to take his birth in a rich or pious family, and one who is carrying impious activity is given a chance to take birth in a lower, poor family. The change of body means a change to a different field of activities. Similarly, when the body of the boy changes into that of a youth, the boyish activities change into a youthful activities. It is clear that a particular type of body is given to the living entity for a particular type of activity. The process is going on perpetually from a time which is impossible to trace out. Vaishnava poets say, therefore, anadi karama phale, which means that these actions and reactions of one's activity cannot be traced, for they may even continue from the last millennium of Brahma's birth to the next millennium. We have seen the example in the life of Narada Muni. In one millennium, he was the son of a maidservant, and in the next millennium, he became a great sage. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Vitinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our everyday discussions on Srimad Bhagavatam. At the outset, I'd like to apologize that I'm not carrying Tilak. I had to come early to office today, so my sincere apologies for that. There are a lot of things Prabhupada kind of included into this verse, starting from the origin of the living entity, which cannot be traced out, as Srila Prabhupada, in the language that Srila Prabhupada uses, to the different cycles, that it is not just within one millennium or the one life cycle of birth of Brahma, but it kind of moves on. A lot of things. So we'll just try to take on one simple thing of the body being a kind of. So we talk of when in the nectar of devotion, when in this verse, Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam Yat Padatvena Nirmalam. What's the next line? Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So we kind of refer to that the service to Krishna, which should be rendered through our senses, that kind of is an indication of Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam, when we kind of let go of all designations. And one of the designation that our acharyas indicate is also the body also being kind of a designation or a kind of facility, and we'll kind of touch upon that idea, and we'll see for the next 15 minutes that we have. But before getting into the discussion, I'd like to start with a story, which is one of a famous story that Srila Prabhupada refers to in many of his purports and in his talks. In fact, in one of the classes, I think that Prabhupada gave, might be in 1972 or some year, Srila Prabhupada says that he starts off the talk saying that I've told this story many times, but I'll still tell it. He keeps saying this over and over in that uh, talk of his where he says that, oh, I've said this point, like especially when he's referring to this story. I've already explained this multiple times, but I'll again explain it. And as he's kind of also explaining the story, he kind of repeats this sentence almost 2 3 times. So the story is of a sage. There are multiple variations. In some cases, it says the sage was traveling alone, and in some cases, in some variations, it says that the sage was carrying with one of his student. In either case, the sage was kind of was traveling across a city, was was on his tour, and he was crossing a forest and a city. And the first person he sees he sees a prince of a royal order prince who is out on his stroll with his entire entourage and the kind of pomp that we usually attribute to a prince with a lot of entourage kind of following him. And the moment the sage sees the prince, he says, "Chiram Jiva, may you live forever." He does not kind of explain or indicate why he's saying so. Um, so he just says, he sees this prince and he says, "Chiranjeeva, may you live forever." And then he moves a little forward, and then he sees a butcher who is slaughtering animals and uh, kind of in a terrible condition, even externally, like not a kind of healthy and kind of environment that he is in. And when he sees the butcher, the says, "Ma Jiva Ma Maro." He says, "May you, there's no point in either you living or dying. May you neither live, may neither die." And he kind of further moves forward. And then he sees a devotee. And then he says, then with the same stoic stature that the sage when kind of reacted when he saw the prince and when he saw the butcher, in a similar way, he sees the devotee. And then he says, "Jivava Marova." It's slightly different to what he said to the butcher. To the butcher, he said, "Ma jiva ma maro." He's kind of reversing that, and then saying to the devotee or the sadhaka, he's saying, "Jiva va marova." For you, life or death is the same. It kind of in a word play, to the butcher also in one way is saying that may you neither live nor die, because it's kind of there's no point. And that kind of is driven more from a negative idea. But for the sadhaka, he says, for you the life or death is still the same, like it is joyful. In the variation where the sage is traveling with a student, then the student asks the sage, "My dear spiritual master, why is it I'm kind of puzzled. Can you explain what just happened?" So the sage then asks the student, "Okay, um, tell me, what did I tell to the prince?" So to the prince, the sage said, "Chiranjeeva," which means live forever. So then the sage asks the student, "Why do you think it is?" Then the student says, I'm kind of puzzled. Why do you want the sage? Why do you want the prince to live forever?" Then the sage says, the prince is in such a what do you say? A kind of materially prosperous life that he is currently in. The idea of what is my ultimate goal is so far ahead, so far kind of from his head, that I want him to live as much as possible, because there is a possibility that maybe at one point he might meet a devotee and might cross path with this idea of that, oh, there is something ulterior than just the life of Mary that I'm following. In case, let's say, even if he's not meeting a devotee because of the present lifestyle that he is kind of quote unquote full of happiness and enjoyment, but because he's not thinking of the ultimate welfare for the soul, the next outcome of this life is not kind of will be leading to a very difficult next life. So that's the reason I'm saying that may you continue living like this, live forever, so that you can at least externally keep happy, be happy, and kind of continue. Then the student says, okay, it makes sense. Then why did you say to the butcher, may you neither live nor die? Then the sage says, because I said to the butcher, because the present condition that he's living is kind of killing all the animals, and with even externally, he's living in a hellish condition, and internally also is kind of always worried because back then when the sage is kind of referring to the butcher, it's not that there was kind of mechanized slaughterhouses available, and like it was kind of much easier option of being a butcher. But back then it was the butcher himself had to go into the forest, hunt the animals, and then get the animals back and kind of complete the process of the butchering and then do whatever he wishes to do with it. So just the process of what he is performing from the initial process is kind of involving a lot of danger, and there is he could die at any time. So in a kind of in a hellish condition that he's currently living in. So in a way that I'm actually blessing the butcher, saying that there is no point in you kind of living this life. So it's by the so either you are living because it is what the your present lifestyle is a kind of hellish condition. Even if you are presently following that, or if you die, it's the outcome is the same, which is a hellish condition. So there's no point in either you living or dying. And then he says, okay, the student then he says, then what you told to the devotee was also kind of similar. You're also even to the devotee you were saying, live or die, it is the same. Then he says, because the devotee, the process that he's currently performing of being a sadhaka, of performing the devotional service, it's not that once he moves on from this life, once, as Kapila is explaining, once the death comes, which is kind of the differentiation of the soul from the gross and material body, even at that point, all you will be for performing is still performing the devotional. So it is not that something would change at the point of death or when he's living. The process will continue to remain the same, which is very auspicious. So for him, his present life is also very auspicious, and his afterlife will also be very auspicious. So that's the reason I'm saying for him, it's either he's living or dying, it is always auspicious. So the point that I kind of wanted to bring upon is for the prince, the devotee, and the butcher, they whatever they are actually performing of being a princely order and kind of relishing, or the devotee or the butcher, they are using the same external facility of the upadhi of the body, where the prince is kind of because of being in that present state of being in the princely order in that external facility of the body that he got as a prince, he is able to relish everything. And the same butcher, because of being in that facility of being a butcher, the upadhi of butcher, again, as we one of the definitions that we also refer to upadhis is the modern language of label. So on an ultimate sense, all of these are parts and parcels of Krishna, either the prince or the devotee or the butcher. But it's kind of because of the present situation that they are in, which is the upadhi or the body, the present circumstances that we have. There is a label that we are kind of referring to them as a prince or the devotee or the butcher, and through that upadhi is what they are able to kind of render what they are able to do. So it's in a way kind of a choice of how we utilize this upadhi, and what the devotees to the for the prince and the butcher, the idea of kind of correlating back to the sarvopadi vinurmuktam, which says let go of all the upadhis and then perform the devotional service, which is what the devotee is doing. For him, is kind of not worried, kind of carrying on the explanation that the sage is doing. For him, either what the process that he's performing is of the devotional service, it does not kind of change if he is in the body, if he's present in this body. Or we have also seen other cases where the devotee external, like even taking the example of Srila Prabhupada himself, um, his external body was completely kind of collapsing. It was like the last few days of the videos, if you have seen, like on an external level, there's almost physically there is nothing that Srila Prabhupada was able to do. But did the intensity of his devotional service drop? Then we all know it did not. So so it um, it's kind of overcoming the idea of that only when I have this um, the facility of performing devotionals with it is through this body is when I can perform. It is much more beyond as the sage and the devotee here in this example are explaining, where either it could be with whatever the facility that we are performing. If we have the facility or we might not have the facility, but it kind of either it could be jivava marova. Either I think there is also a bhajan um, along the same lines where believe it is Bhaktivinoda Thakur who's singing that, may I perform devotional service either in this life or in that Jivava Marova. I think it taught the verse also is no, the verse is from Vritrasura, where he's saying that it is a very famous, or is it from Vitrasura or Balimara? I'm kind of confusing. But there's a very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam where this exact line comes, Jivava Marova, where they're saying that may I continue to perform devotional service either in this life or after that. That is my only aspiration of kind of continuing to perform the devotional service. So then comes the question of then what is what is it that um, kind of letting go of body? Is it like how can you even let go of the body? Like I have this body till by the natural course I'm kind of taken away this body. I have this, so it's not like a label um of kind of an attachment, or anything that I have where I can kind of let go. So the answer kind of lies in the question that I have raised, is the idea of my body, which is very greatly explained in the Kunti Maharani's prayers when she talks about the Sneha Pasham in the famous verse from the prayers of Kunti Maharani. I think one of the most, after the most well-known verse from Kunti Maharani, or the most questions raised prayer of Kunti Maharani, where she is saying, let more difficulties come. Then the second question comes on this of Kunti Maharani's prayers, where she is saying that um, अतः विश्वेश विश्वात्मन विश्वमूर्ते स्वकेशु मे स्नेह पाशम imam chindi dridam pandushuvi vrishnavi. So where she's saying that let go of my tie of affection. And the specific word, it when we kind of refer to this in just in the English language of sever my tie of affection to the both the Pandus and Vishnus, it might actually appear very confusing. But if we kind of go back to the original language of the word that Kunti Maharani uses, which is the Sneha Pasham. Pasham usually refers to being kind of a bondage, or like one of the famous kind of references to the word Pasham is used when with reference to the the kind of the bondage that Yamaraj creates, which is the Yama Pasham, which is once you kind of let loose the Yama Pasham, there is no way that you can kind of escape from it. So it kind of holds you so strongly, like yeah. So with that idea, the Sneha Pasham is something that is kind of holding. But I think it is back in 20, like I always had this question, why was Kunti Maharani referring that, like I think Srila Prabhupada also many times rhetorically asked these questions. um like she's related to Pandu, she's related to Pandavas through Pandu, and then she's related to Vishnu from her both from her kind of maternal family. And in fact, both of them are exalted devotional families that are also directly related to Krishna himself. So why is it that she's kind of asking Imam Chindi break open? I believe it was in 2018, in one of the retreats that Rampad Maharaj was giving in Kishore Kishore. He kind of explained that what she is asking is not to kind of sever the ties with the family members. What she's exactly asking is to break away the feeling of these are my family members, kind of that personal. So let me be related to these both families as with the idea that they are your eternal servants. And with that idea, as long as I'm related to them, I'm in a much safer position. But if I'm related, if I'm considering both the Pandus and the Vishnus are related to me as my family members, quote unquote, my family members, then I kind of get into this Sneha Pasam where I'm kind of not able to choose what to do. But once I kind of let go of the Sneha Pasam of these are my family members, then I'll be in a much broader idea, which I think to this verse, Srila Prabhupada also refers to the six Goswamis, where they have they have broadened the horizons of the family members, which is the famous example of Sanatan Goswami himself, where Sanatan Goswami, even till this day, is considered as the guru of the whole Vrajamandala because where there are multiple stories where once he became the Goswami, then he used to actually kind of, when he was living in Vrindavan, he used to personally take care of every family member that was across the Vrajamandal Parikrama. He used to kind of walk into their house, check how their family members are doing, if they needed some help with their daughter's wedding, or even if some of their calves or cows were not well, then you would kind of suggest, okay, this is something that you could do. And like kind of because he served as the prime minister, he kind of has the complete understanding of not just from a scriptural and a devotional understanding, but also how the kind of the external world works, and like with that understanding, he was kind of personally taking care. That idea, it's not that he was thinking that, oh, not just because they're Rajavasis, but he was simply taking care of them as a kind of elderly family member, kind of walking into every person who is across the Vrajamandala that were there. So that's what Srila Prabhupada refers to this in this purport, where he says kind of expanding the horizons of that, kind of letting go of my family members. So with the same thing, that brings us back to our point of Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam, where kind of what the devotee is explaining here is kind of let go of that attachment of this body. And once we kind of overcome that bodily attachment, then we kind of, whether it could be as Jivava Marova, either it be the life or it could be the afterlife, or it could be during the death also. We have also discussed multiple times of multiple personalities who have kind of exemplified the process of performing devotional service through death, um, where it's kind of the key to all of performing the devotional service, either Jivava, Marova, whatever could be the situation, is in that understanding of Sarvopadi Muktam, which is not just of something that is external, but also kind of which is always with us, of internal and external. It's like, as Hiranyakashipu says, neither it could be died outside or inside, but there is also something middle. For us also, many times we might refer to as anything that is outside of the body, anything that is inside of the body, the attachments within the body, and then that anything attachment like kind of external personality manifestations of those attachments outside of the body. But we should also, unlike Hiranyakashipu, we should also be taking care of this middle part of this body, which is in a way kind of a root for all, with this understanding of my body. As long as we can let go of the sarvopadi, beginning from the body, internal and external, then we'll not have to face the wrath of Narsimadev like Hiranyakashipu, but be in a much happy and joyful position of being in the place of Prahlad Maharaj. So with that, I'll end. Actually, I have to run, so I'm not be able to maybe take questions. But if there are any corrections or thing, I'm happy that we can maybe discuss some other time. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। हरे कृष्णा।